Okay, here's how I want to start today. I would like you to physically grab one of these cards. There's probably one in the little pocket in the seat in front of you. If you are in the front row, and I know everyone's clamoring to get to the front row, you'll have to reach behind you. Maybe somebody behind you can hand you one. I really would like you to grab one of these cards. Physically grab one of these cards. And a pencil or a pen. And on the back of this card, here's what I would like you to do. Answer this question. Why are you here today? Like, I'd really like the answer to this question. Why are you here? Why are you at church? And then, why are you at this church? Now, if you're watching our live stream, probably the answer shouldn't be, well, I live here. If you're watching our live stream, why did you tune in? Okay, that's a curious question. And you can actually fill out this card on our live stream. There's a virtual card there. Love to have you fill that out. I'm just going to give you about 60 seconds, 90 seconds to actually fill that card out. You don't have to write your name on it or anything like that. Just write that on the back. Why are you here? Love to have an answer. Like, if you're here because your husband made you come, that's a good enough answer. Or your wife made you come. Or, you woke up this morning and you don't have a Super Bowl party. And, you could be at home, right, putting barbecue sauce on those little sausages in your crock pot. You're prepping for the Super Bowl. Oh, they don't have any more? They're out of little sausages for. Well, it is the Super Bowl. It's like Thanksgiving, trying to find a turkey on the last day. You better show up early, all right? Go ahead. Why are you here? Why are you at church? Oh, and maybe more specifically, why are you at this church? But I'm just curious about that question. Okay, now you can keep going if you're not quite finished, or if you're done, that's great. Now, here's the next step. If you're willing, go ahead and write your contact information on there. You're not required to, but if you're willing, go ahead and write who this is. Like, I don't want to make a joke about it. Just if you want to, if you're willing, put your name on that, and then what I'd like you to do when you leave is put it in that box back there, right by the door, where some of you put your offering. Just put it right in there. And so, why are you here? And then, if you're willing, who are you? And then, because we're genuinely curious about like why are people here? And so, I appreciate you doing that. Now, here's what I'd like to do next. Let's explore whether or not you put your name on your card. Not out loud, but did you put your name on your card? Just think about that for a second. If you did put your name on your card, that means something. And if you didn't put your name on your card, that means something too. Here's what I think it means. If you're willing to say, here's why I'm here, and here's who I am, you're actually allowing us access into your life. Like, if you come here on a Sunday morning, or if you watch our live stream and turn in a card and let us know how to pray for you or whatever, there's a degree to which, in a real way, you're allowing access into your life. When you open your life up to someone, you're allowing access. And relationship centers around, in very real terms, allowing access. It's very difficult to have relationship if you don't allow access. You can't really be friends with another person you're unwilling to allow access into your life. You can be acquaintances, you can work together, you could do projects together, but you probably don't have real relationship. In your marriage, if it's going really well, the likelihood is you're allowing each other access into your life. If there's stuff you're keeping back, there's a potential to create a wall, and so access is denied in some ways. And the question that I want to answer this morning, at least in part, is what does it look like to abide in Jesus? And at least in part, the answer is that we abide as we are rooted in friendship with Jesus. And so how do we do that? And so here's a question. How do you orient your life and the spaces of your life to draw you into friendship with Jesus and with other people, perhaps? How do you orient your life? How do you orient your home? Is your home a place that allows access, that invites people in? Or is it a place that's like, this is my place. I don't really let people in here. I try to orient my life around visual stuff because I'm a pretty visual guy, as you probably would imagine. But so my office is oriented in a very visual way, specifically for friendship. I think about this very routinely, and I think about it daily. I like candle clusters, which I know you probably have figured out about me by now if you've been coming here for very long. And so in my study at home, I have a couple of candle clusters. The first one has 3 candles. Now, this is actually a picture of my this is right in front of me. As I sit in my chair, these 3 candles are right in front of me. And when I come into my study in the morning, I light these candles. I get my coffee. I have my pencils on my little desk thing, my little side table. I get my journal. I have my little laptop. I sit down. I light these candles, and then I sit down, and that's how I start with these candles. Now, these candles are symbolic to me of the Trinity, that I gather in the morning. I'm not alone in my study. I'm there with the Father and with the Son and the Holy Spirit who join me and promise to be with me. And so I do that. It's a really specific daily ritual for me. If I'm home, I do that. Then I have a cluster of 2 candles, and these are kind of to the left of me, and these are on my desk. And these candles remind me of 2 things. When I start my day, I really focus on these 2 candles for a moment, and I think about my friendship with Jesus, that he and we're going into this day together. The other thing I do with these candles is when I'm praying for Charlene, which I try to do every morning before she goes off to school, I think about these guys. This is the 2 of us. This is the visual for me. This is why I have these candles. Now, I have a couple of other things in my study that also are important to me. Above my desk, I have a couple of pictures. And the first picture, which was given to me as a gift and I love, is the icon of Christ and Abba Minas. This is just right up on the wall in front of me, and I pay attention to that. It's about this big, and I think about that picture a little bit, and I'm drawn to that picture a little bit. I think about friendship, and that icon is meant to be about friendship. And the inscription at the bottom of it is, "I call you my friends." Now, the other picture that I have, which is on the left-hand side of my study by my computer, is this picture. These are my 2 high school friends. These are my best friends from high school. I hang out with these guys. I think I was about 23 in that picture. We had just gotten done on a long hike in the the Sawtooth Wilderness area. And we got back to the car. We took this picture, and this is 1980, I don't know, 4 or something. I found this on the web. Thank you. Anyway, we took another picture just a couple years ago. This one, the next one up there, I also have at my house somewhere. And there is a next picture, I think, up there. Yeah, there it is. This is just a couple of years ago. You've noticed probably that the other guys have aged quite a bit. But these are my friends. These are guys I don't have lots of friends, but this picture and these relationships, even though we live very different lives, we have very different perspectives on the world. These are guys I've journeyed a long way with in life. We've journeyed through hard things and lots of different things. But here's something that's true. The people you give your time to will impact your life the most. If you're a young person, let me just tell you that the people that you give your life to right now are going to impact the next 5 years of your life more than anything else you decide. The people you spend time with will impact your life. But this is true no matter how old you are. This is absolutely true at my age, or if you're 10 years old or 12 years old or 30. The people you spend time with really impact how your life goes. It dramatically shapes your life. And it's the case with any age group. Because if you're spending time with people who are toxic, that's going to be toxic in your life. And if you're spending time with people who build your life up, that's going to build your life up. And these friends of mine have almost always been, since I was a junior in high school, a really positive influence in my life. I doubt if I would be here doing this job today if these guys hadn't been my friends in high school. I never really knew that people studied until I was a junior in high school. I joined the jazz band, and I became friends with these guys. And first things, they invited me to a study party. I said, I don't know what that means, but if it's a party, I'll come. We studied for some history test, and I got a B on it. That was the first time I think I maybe gotten a B. I was so excited. These guys have almost always been a positive. I mean, there were a few times when they were negative and, we did things that we probably maybe shouldn't have done, but in general, it's been really helpful to me in my life. And I'm drawn in this direction of friendship today because Jesus, wonder of wonders, calls us friends. I want you to turn to John chapter 15. Just hang on to it for a minute. Just turn there. Don't do anything with it yet. I want to do this with you this morning, and it'll take a minute, but I want to do this with you. I want to read this text to you, and I would love for you, and there won't be anything on the screen but what's there now. I'd love for you just to listen. If you want to close your eyes and listen, that's great. And then the second time, we'll have the slides up, and you can read along as I read it, okay? John 15, 1 through 17. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. Already you are clean because of the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me, and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away like a branch and withers. And the branches are gathered, thrown into the fire and burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I've spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing. But I have called you friends. For all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you, and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask in the Father in my name, he may give it to you. These things I command you, so that you will love one another. Okay, and so you've heard it. Now, I want you to read it with me. If you'd like to actually read aloud, I'll try to find a meter that works for us. But the text will be up on the screen, and I want to read this text again, John 15, 1 through 17. So if you'd like to read along, feel free to read even out loud. Okay, here we go. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. Already you are clean because of the word that I've spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me, and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away like a branch and withers. And the branches are gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you, and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you. These things I command you, so that you will love one another. Lord Jesus, we thank you for your teaching in this text, and that was recorded by John. We know there's a lot here, but we want to turn our hearts in these next moments toward friendship. We thank you for calling us friend. Amen. Now, I think it's important for us to recognize that Jesus is not only our friend, but he is our friend nonetheless. Jesus isn't only our friend. One of the things that I was thinking about as I was reading this text and thinking about friendship is that I want to be mindful of the other things that we know is to be true about Jesus, in case that we would fall into just a really casual relationship with Jesus to the point that we forget about who he is also, in addition to one who calls us friend. And I guess that for some of us in this room, even the idea of thinking primarily about my relationship with Jesus as friendship is uncomfortable. Maybe it's uncomfortable for you. And we know that Jesus said some other things about who he was, about what he came to do. And so how does Jesus refer to himself? Here are just a few ways that Jesus refers to himself other than as our friend. In Matthew chapter 8, verse 20, he calls himself the Son of Man. Right? And Jesus said, foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. And this title points to his awesome power and divine nature. In Mark chapter 14, verse 62, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven. So we understand this majesty and this coming kingdom. He calls himself I am in John 8. Verse 58, before Abraham was born, I am. Right? This is a designation that God gives himself back in Exodus 3 when Moses asked God, who are you? And God says, I am who I am. This is a designation of God as eternal, his infinite nature, no beginning and no end. Jesus refers to himself in this same way. Jesus calls himself the way, the truth, and the life in John chapter 14, 6. This is an interesting way for Jesus to designate himself because he's not saying, I know the way, I know the truth, and I can show you the light. He says, I am these things. I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the light. Jesus calls himself life. He says, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, he says in John chapter 6. In John chapter 11, when he's talking to Martha, he says to her, I am the resurrection and the life. So we understand these significant, dramatic designations that Jesus makes of himself. Jesus calls himself the Good Shepherd in John 10, the light of the world in John 8, and Lord and Teacher in John chapter 13, Messiah and Christ in John chapter 4. And here in John 15, he calls himself the vine. And so we need to see and recognize the splendor and majesty, the might and the power of Jesus as God. And we don't want to minimize it by bringing him down to our level. And it's important for you to work through that a bit in whatever ways you need to. But it's also important to remember that we didn't bring him down to our level. He brought himself. He came. Right? Scripture teaches us that he emptied himself in Philippians chapter 2, becoming like us. In Hebrews chapter 4, we don't have a high priest who doesn't understand us, but one who's tempted in every way like we are, who's been through what we're going through. Jesus, God brought near in the person of Christ. Philippians says he emptied himself. And so Christ comes near in the person of Jesus. And in 1 John, we read about the real human and divine Jesus. Think about these words as the Apostle John writes them. that which was from the beginning, the infinitely from the beginning, which we have heard with our ears, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked upon and we touched with our hands, concerning the word of life. That life was made manifest, and we have seen it and testified to it and proclaimed to you the eternal life, which was with the Father and was made manifest to us. That which we have seen and heard we proclaim also to you, so that you may have fellowship with us. And indeed, our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. And that's why we're writing these things to you, so that you may enter into this life. Saying this is an amazing story that God came near in the person of Jesus Christ. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And here in John chapter 15, he is the one who says, I call you friends. He's the one who makes this proclamation. So if it makes you uncomfortable that I'm bringing Jesus to this level of friendship, that may seem too lowly a designation for the God of the universe. Remember, he said it first. I'm just repeating what he said. And what could make his willingness to befriend us more incredible than that? I mean, think about the psalmist in Psalm 8, David. When I think about the immensity of the universe, what is man that you even think about us? Well, when we think of the immensity of the person of God, who are we that he would decide to call us friend? But that's the story here. The God of the universe in human form says, I call you friend. It's important to soak in that once in a while. When you feel like you don't measure up, when you feel like you're not making the grade, when you feel distant from Christ, remember, he called you friend. And Jesus teaches us a little bit about friendship in John chapter 15. What does it look like? What do we learn about friendship in John 15? Remember that over the last week or so, I've asked you to reflect on friendship a bit, because what makes for good friendship with other humans also applies to what makes good friendship with God and with Christ. And so we turn back to John chapter 15 again, and what are some of the things that we pick up in John 15 about friendship? Well, friendship means putting another first, right? If you have a friend, you put them first. And Jesus says this, no greater love has someone than this, that they lay down their life for their friends. And that's what I've done. I've laid my life down for you. Friendship means sacrifice. It's you giving up you for another person. At any level of real friendship, true friendship requires this, right? You've probably heard it said, who's the person you call at 2 a.m? That's your friend. Like when you're on the freeway and your car's broke down, you're stuck in the mountains, or you've woken up with a horrible nightmare and you're struggling with anxiety. Who do you call in that moment? That's your friend. And who answers the phone? Your real friend, right? That's how it works. It's putting others first. Now, what follows on to this, and this would need a little bit more unpacking. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but I think this is interesting. Friendship responds to the will of another. Jesus says this, you're my friends if you do what I command you. Now, here I think it's fair to realize that when Jesus commands us, that's different. That is on a different level, because he is Lord, than your friend commanding you. If your friend is commanding you to do evil things, that's not friendship. Don't do that. But it is true, isn't it, that if you're in a relationship with someone and they never do what you want to do, but only do what they want to do, and if you don't do what they want to do, they don't want to be your friend, that's not your friend. Right? When your friend says, hey, let's go here this time, right? Charlotte gives me a little bit of a hard time, because it used to be that whenever we leave town, and we're like in Spokane or Wenatchee, where do you want to have lunch? I want to have lunch at Olive Garden, because I just know what I'm going to get. I'm a little bit like that. I want to get what I know I'm going to get. So she said to me, we always have to go to Olive Garden. So now, when we go to Wenatchee, we never go to the Olive Garden. Now we go, and when I say now, I mean every single time now. We go to the India House, because Charlotte wants India House. She likes Indian food, and it's delightful. I mean, make no mistake, it is. But I laughed at her the last couple of times I've been there. I said, have you noticed that we always have to go to the India House when we come to Wenatchee? Like, I mean, how much curry can one person take? But if we always go just where I want to go, right? It was funny, we were talking about Valentine's Day yesterday. She goes, so what do you got planned for Valentine's Day? I go, I have a very robust plan. I mean, I said, well, it's not a complete plan, completely yet. I said, what, do you have something in mind? I was like, yeah. So she goes, I'd kind of like to go to this restaurant if they're still open. I'm like, okay, thank you for that subtle Not so subtle hint. So I'm going to do my best to make reservations at that place. And I'm not going to tell you where that is because you'll call first and then I won't be able to get a table. But that's what friendship is, right? Friendship. And Sharon's my wife, but she's also my friend. When you're friends, you don't just always do what you want. Sometimes you do the will of the other. And again, that's something that needs to be carefully walked out in human relationship, because that's not the same relationship as our relationship with Jesus for sure. But friendship also looks like allowing access. Notice that Jesus says, "No longer do I call you servants, because servants don't know what the master is doing. But I've called you friends because I have made known to you all that the Father made known to me." Like the servants in the house don't get to let in on the strategy. They don't get let in on the inner circle. Jesus says, I'm allowing you access to all that the Father has told me. What He's told me, I'm telling you because we're friends. You're not servants now, you're friends. Jesus teaches us that friendship chooses the other. Jesus said, "You did not choose me, but I chose you." The gift of being chosen. There's hardly anything more powerful. I remember fourth grade. In fourth grade, I was not a big kid when I was in elementary school, but I remember going out on the playground, and there was a season we were playing football on the playground, and the sixth graders who were in charge of the playground, as is proper, were always the captains of the football teams, right? So we would do that thing, right, where you choose up sides. So you're getting a line, and you're a fourth grader, like you're not the biggest guy in the line, you're in the line. I got chosen one time, and I had an amazing game. I caught like 8 passes. It was unbelievable. It was like Hall of Fame kind of day. For the rest of the spring or the fall, until it was too cold to be outside, I got picked really early on. The sixth graders started calling me Gene Washington. You remember Gene Washington? Yeah, some of you don't. He was an amazing receiver, played for the Minnesota Vikings. He was an olden times guy. Probably they had leather helmets. But anyway, that thing of being chosen, I could not wait to get to the playground because I got chosen. And then I somehow, by miracle, I caught like 8 passes. And then I was always I was famous with the sixth graders for like 3 or 4 months. I still remember it. I'm telling you the story. There's nothing like being chosen, right? Jesus says, I chose you. And I chose you even when you weren't exactly 100%. I chose you. Friendship means seeking the other's best interest. Notice what Jesus says in verse 11. "These things I've spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full." The heart of Christ here is for our best, for our joy to be made full. Genuine friendship with another person desires the best, the most abundant life that could ever be available to them. If you're truly someone's friend, you want the best for them. You're not jealous of what they have. You want them to succeed. This is really important, because sometimes we can think if I don't succeed above the other people, something's going to go south. No, friendship wants the other to succeed. It celebrates the successes of others. And friendship is characterized by being with rather than just knowing about. Jesus says, "You're my friends if you abide in my love." If you are with me. All kinds of good things happen as we abide with Christ. The word abide can be translated in a number of ways, but it means generally to be with. It can be translated dwell or remain, but in the end, it's about being with someone. And the rootedness and the resilience that comes into our lives because we've been with Jesus far outdistances what can happen in our lives because we know about Jesus. Lots of people know about Jesus. Right? Scripture tells us even the demons know about Jesus, and they shudder. And this is the case with all human relationships, by the way. When we are with people, it's impactful and it changes things. I remember my junior year in high school. This is when I started playing in the jazz band, and I was a drummer in the jazz band. We were a little tiny school, but we had a really good jazz band, and I'm not making that up. We were pretty good. And we would go to festivals, and sometimes, even though we were an A school, we would play in the 4A division. And we were just really good. And we went to the Boise State Jazz Festival my junior year, and we won it. And because we won it, we got to record a song on the album. I'd like to listen to that song again. Who knows where that would be? Who knows where albums are? But I remember that. And that night, of the last night of the festival, after we'd recorded our stuff and it was kind of a big thing, Bill Watrous was there. Now, Bill Watrous was an amazing trombone player, probably one of the best in the world. And he was one of the adjudicators. So he was judging our work and all that. And all the rest of the adjudicators were there also, and they all played for us on that last night of the festival, Friday night. Really big deal. And they were really amazing in this way. They didn't miss a lick. They didn't miss a note. I mean, every single thing was perfect, and they were also supremely uninteresting. They just were. Like, it was just like, this is just clockwork. I mean, these guys are amazing. Nobody misses anything, but they didn't have a vibe. You know what I'm talking about? Like, they just didn't have the vibe. They didn't just cause you to just smile when they played together. We also got to hear the jazz band weather report. Incredible. And it was totally different. You just like welled up in you when you heard them because they've been with each other. These other guys were amazing. Incredible professionals, but they hadn't been playing with each other. It changes things. Friendship is being with others. And then your relationship with Jesus, if it doesn't have a richness, it's just possible that your relationship with Jesus is rooted in what you know about Jesus rather than in whether or not you've been with Jesus. There's a difference. And the difference is abiding. Friendship with Jesus looks like abiding. And so what does it mean to abide? Now, I've spent some time in my preparation on this series working out an acrostic of what it looks like to have friendship, what it looks like to abide. And I want you to think about that with me for a minute. Let's break that down. So the A in abiding is allowing access. A is allowing access. This is what it means to abide. Jesus started by allowing access. I haven't kept anything from you that the Father made known to me. That's a sign of friendship. I think real friendship with Jesus must include allowing Christ access into your life. So, are you allowing Christ access into your life? And here's a way to think about this. What are you not talking to Christ about? What are you not talking to Jesus about? What are you keeping back? What are you holding behind the veil? So much of Jesus' interaction with people was seeking access into their real lives. The question that Jesus asks aren't questions to gain information, they're questions to gain access. Remember, when blind Bartimaeus comes to Jesus in Mark chapter 10, it says they came to Jericho, and as they were leaving Jericho with his disciples and a great crowd, Bartimaeus, a blind beggar, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. And they said, stop talking. But then Jesus said, call him. And they called the blind man and saying to him, take heart, get up, he's calling you. And throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. And Jesus said to him, what do you want me to do for you? Now, here's what we know. We know that Bartimaeus is blind. It made it clear in the text. What kind of a question is this? What do you want me to do for you? It's a question not to get information. It was a question to gain access. What's really going on in you? What's really there? In John chapter 1, 35 through 42, John the Baptist points out Jesus to his disciples, and he says, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. And two of John's disciples start following Jesus. And Jesus turns back to them and asks this question, what are you looking for? What are you seeking? What are you after? It's a real question. Abiding requires allowing access. Think about Revelation 3, verse 20. Such a fantastic example. Behold, I stand at the door and knock, and if anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and have a meal with him. It's Jesus asking for access. I'm waiting. If you want to open the door, I'll come in. You want to keep the door closed, of course that's up to you. That's also a good sign of friendship, isn't it? You don't push your way into where you're not invited. This is Jesus asking for access. Abiding looks like allowing access. And if you can't be honest with Jesus about who you really are in your darkest moments, then it'll be difficult for real relationship to be a part of your life with Jesus. And so what are you not talking to Jesus about, and why? So it looks like allowing access. It's also, abiding is also the B. Be present. Be still. Do you know what love in relationship looks like? It looks like time. Being still. Being present. being available. What's the most important thing you can do for someone who's grieving? Show up and shut up, right? People who are grieving, I've walked with some people in the last year or so. A lot of hard stuff, a lot of hard stuff. And you know what people don't need from me in those moments is some answer to why this happened. That's not what they need from me. They need for me to be present and to be still and to be quiet and to just be. And abiding looks like being still, and it looks like being present. It's listening. Remember that thing that we used to say, if you're younger, you probably haven't heard this before. I remember when I was right out of college, we used to say this thing, well, I don't have a lot of time, but I'm giving quality time. It's not quantity time, it's quality time. I just want to say to you that I think we figured out that that's not true. Because quality time is difficult to have without quantity. Now, you may have more or less time, and definitely you can spend your time in better ways and worse ways. But I think that was a joke that I think it was something we tried to tell ourselves when we didn't want to spend the time needed to actually build relationship. Quality time, being present. I love the story in John 4 of the woman at the well, and Jesus just is with her for a long time. Just being present, talking to her, asking questions, asking for access into her life. Access happens over time, by the way. Really close relationships are built over time because we don't allow everyone access immediately to the very center of our soul on the first day. It takes time. Trust is built over time and actually time spent together. And so it's important that you get some time. Now, I'm in a different place than you are. I show you pictures of my study, and I can say, I can go in there in the morning, and I can be there for an hour, easily an hour, sometimes maybe more. And you're like, yeah, well, my life doesn't allow that right now. I get that. And my life used to be like your life. But we have to find time. I know I'm not trying to put pressure on you about how much time you're spending with Christ, but it has to be time. If you want real relationship, that's what abiding looks like. And it's invitation. Abiding looks like invitation. I want to turn to the icon of Christ and Abba Minus. And I try to imagine myself in the mornings. And what do you notice in this icon? You notice that Christ and Abba Minus are standing side by side. Christ's arm is around him, and they're looking forward into the day. I try to start my day this way, thinking about my day, looking forward, like Christ is going to be good. He's standing beside me, like, I'm going to go with you. Where are we going? I try to imagine myself in that place, looking down the road to where we're headed together. That Christ is with me in that journey. I'm inviting into my daily existence, into my daily walk. I think about the shorter version of the prayer attributed to St. Patrick. Christ with me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ in me, Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ on my right, Christ on my left. Christ when I lie down, Christ when I sit up, Christ when I arise, Christ in the heart of every human, every man who thinks of me, Christ in the mouth of everyone who speaks of me, Christ in every eye that sees me, Christ in every ear that hears me, Christ in my life. This is the invitation for Christ to be part of all the parts of my day. It's me inviting him along. Where are you going in your day that you don't want Jesus to go with you? That's probably as important a question as, what are you not talking to Jesus about? Where are you going in your day that actually you'd rather have him just not come with you? Invitation, come with me everywhere. Abiding is offering Christ an invitation into all the parts of your daily life. One of the ways that you can make this a habit, and Phil mentioned this a couple of weeks ago in his series on firm foundations, is even before you get out of bed in the morning, before your feet hit the floor, just offer this short prayer. Lord Jesus, I want you to go with me into this day. This is a day you've given me. Walk with me into this day. And it's dialogue. Abiding is dialogue. Dallas Willard says this: prayer is talking with God about what we're doing together. Ignatian spirituality has this really interesting idea about coming into your devotional time and doing something like this. When you come to be with Christ, take a pause and use your imagination and look at Christ looking at you. Look at Christ looking at you. God is looking at you. And God is present with you. And he's attentive to you. It's a little bit like leaning in, right? In the Psalms, maybe this looks like that inclining yourself. Have you noticed in Psalm like 116? I love the Lord because he's heard my voice and my pleas for mercy because he's inclined his ear to me. He's leaning in. to be attentive to me. God is infinitely able to pay attention to you and every other person at the same time. And now we know that monologue means one person talking because mono is one and logo is word or discourse or talk. So it's one person talking. So what do we know about dialogue? What does dia mean? That was a trick question. I led you right into it. That was not a nice thing to do. But dia doesn't mean to. It actually means through. Right? Dia doesn't mean to. It means through. The Socratic method of teaching, made popular by the Greek philosopher Socrates, and the method named after him, was teaching through dialogue. As a teacher, Socrates spent more time questioning answers than he did answering questions. And what he believed was this would lead people through a journey to truth. That dialogue brings people through a journey to discover truth. Dialogue is a conversation in which people think together in relationship. When Jesus is asking questions of people, he wasn't only seeking access, he was helping them see and to hear themselves. And so we can explore dialogue with Christ as he speaks to us in the Word, as he speaks to us in creation, as he speaks to us in our inner person, right? That Christ dwells in us. That's the hope of glory, Paul says. You can expect Christ speaking into your heart. That's not in any way out of bounds. We can hear Christ in our longings. Christ speaks to us in our desires